So, you want to pass INSURV. Good morning. I'm Commander Daniels, hopefully here to give some help, tips, and advice, and in general, something to think about. We all want to succeed and do well. I have yet to meet the sailor who gets up every day and wants nothing but failure, despair, and loss. Case in point. Shipmate, do you want to be successful?
Yes, sir, I do.
Outstanding. To get back to the basics and a quick reality check. Why did you join? To be a success, a person of importance and responsibility, defend your country, get an education, maybe make money. The list goes on. With that said, the ship is yours to take care of. I always say, if you want to improve this place, then start by improving yourself. If kept ship shape and Bristol fashion, your ship can defend our nation and literally keep your life afloat on the briny foam while viewing dark, clouded horizons. Take charge and ownership because it is in fact yours to do so. Back to the INSURV. Why do we have so many ships, i.e. deck departments, not doing well? After being the lead deck inspector for INSURV the last couple of years, I have a few conclusions as to the reasons for the less than fabulous scores and trends. 1. Tribal knowledge. We always do it or did it this way. This is a result of BM2 teaching Seaman Timmy how to do something. Mind you, at no time was a book or reference used. At some point, Seaman Timmy becomes the BM2 and retains about 80% of the non-referenced tribal knowledge he was taught. As you can see, the cycle has now resulted in a bad culture of learning and a decrease in knowledge. INSURV is going to go by the references and the written procedures, period. Not what we always did in the past. This comes as a shock to the unread, thus the term "we don't know what we don't know" applies. Imagine our nukes running ships by tribal knowledge. Scary thought. They will have a process and a procedure, the whole works, etc. for everything that they do. What if our air bubbas fix the aircraft and planes by tribal knowledge? Once again, a very scary thought. Let's put these bombs together, how we think they should work. Who needs these instructions? So, back to the reasons for us not reading the references. It was a part of the deck culture to run around loud with knives, marlin spikes, taking charge, and being tough bosun mates. Great qualities given the right circumstances and time. It was not cool to say, "I don't know, let me look it up in the book." So our egos tend to get in the way of passing INSURV because we think we will look dumb if we look something up in front of our peers. Flash traffic, shipmates. You will look great if you read the references and are the subject matter expert. For the senior deck persons and those aspiring to be the senior deck leadership, shipmate, what do you want to be?
Senior Chief Bosunmate, sir.
There you go, well, Senior Chief Bosunmates. Unsolicited advice from me, over 30 years of experience. Be the teacher and your team will follow. They'll follow you as their leader. Note, the teacher must know the books to be able to teach them. Also note, the team will be impressed and confident things are being done right, i.e. by the book, and excel to do even better knowing their leadership generally cares about not only them, but the equipment. At this point, we're going on a journey through the ship to learn some examples and tips that hopefully will help. Let's go ahead and set the sea and anchor detail, and let's take station on the forecastle and see what we got. Shipmate, come on, let's go on the ship.
Yes, sir.
What are these references I keep speaking of? These references INSURV keeps talking about. First thing, look at the checklist on our website. They are listed there for every area, every reference. If it says, are your lifelines in accordance with GSO 612 Delta, then you had better read GSO 612 Delta before you put a yes on the checklist. Let's explain this from the start so everybody understands. First, a GSO, a specification, was created for the Navy. Let's use 583 as our GSO example, i.e. small boats. Then, an NSTM, a tech manual, was created after the boat was built from the GSO, the specification. We wrote a tech manual for it. Then, the tech manual also has a specific tech manual for specific boats, i.e. everything from the old school motor whale boats all the way to the 11-meter ribs. Next thing we did was we created blueprints. After we created those blueprints, the last and final thing that we did was we created PMS for that small boat. Of note, the MIP for the small boat, 583.2. That's amazing how all these numbers match. GSO 583, we got NSTM 583, and we got the MIP 583.2. How did Big Navy do this? Did they do that on purpose? I think so. The most recent up-to-date reference would be your PMS, i.e. SFRs, semi-forced revision. Go backwards in the creation process, and if there was any disparity between the GSO spec written before the boat was built and the PMS, which is at most 6 months old, which one do you think overrides the other? Of course, the PMS overrides. What NSTM covers lifelines? Trick question. If you said 612, you would be wrong. Why? Because GSO 612 had no NSTM written for it. The 600 series NSTMs. What this means is the GSO went straight to blueprints for lifelines and to PMS. Interesting. Of course, there are other references out there that we use in deck. The SORM, the GIFM, NTTP, etc. There are many places you can get up-to-date references. For start, use our website. We try to make it as close as one-stop shopping, up-to-date as possible. The Navy's biggest open book test is in fact what INSURV is. Take your time, look up the answers. We gave you the questions, i.e. the checklist. We gave you where to find them, i.e. the references. Life is good. You can even ask someone for help, another ship for help, a shipmate, whatever you need. Easy day. How could you possibly get this wrong or fail this open book test? Okay, here on the forecastle with a couple of my shipmates, we need to talk about INSURV and what you need to do and what helps, what works, what doesn't work, okay? I got my shipmate here. He's gonna hammer it out with us, and we're gonna go ahead and tighten this procedure up, if you will, a little bit. So, with that said, INSURV is gonna come aboard. Day one, they're gonna go straight to your windlass, and they're gonna down your chain locker, and they're gonna wanna see how you're attached down below. Your right side shackle is in accordance with your blueprint. Your detachable, do you have a joiner link or don't you? What kind of shackle is it? Screw pin, safety, what's the blueprint say? That's what you should have on it. Okay, next thing you're gonna do is they're gonna come up here, and they're gonna look at your forecastle and your ground tackle. They're gonna make sure all your detachables are tight, they're in accordance with your PMS, 36M1. Okay, you gotta make sure you read that. The movement, is it in accordance with, does it exceed? The whole works as far as doing the test. They're gonna make sure you have at least one ready anchor to get underway. Then they're going to look at some of your SAR stuff. Do you have a SAR capability to get underway in accordance with the GIFM? A boat to recover? Do you have your swimmers? At least one with a waiver, preferably two in accordance with. Do you have the forecastle equipment? This ship doesn't. It has it on the side ports, but most ships have them on the J-bars on the forecastle. Some of the other things we're going to want to see to help you out with INSURV. Stuff laid out in pairs, okay, in groups. And when I say in groups, I'm talking about if you have 100 of something, lay it out in groups of 10. If you have lines that need to be measured, such as these P&D lines over here, then you're going to want to make sure that they're laid out in fakes of however many feet, 50 feet, something like that, so I can go 50, 152, 250. Same with your well deck, all your lines and stuff like that. This is a case in point of do you do your checklist, is the P&D line in accordance with? Well, it says that the flags have to be at 20 feet. But did you actually take a tape measure and measure them? Because you'll find out that some of them are at 16 feet, some of them are at 25 feet, and that's scary. Even when they come from the manufacturer, they're not exactly 20 feet center to center. So you need to measure them. This is the kind of stuff we're talking about, attention to detail, the stuff we learned in boot camp that we need to do to make sure we pass. Because INSURV is going to measure them, and they're going to make sure you're right. Your J-bar davits, are they right? Do they have the right number of blocks? Do they have the right shackles on them? Are they safety shackles? Are your hoisting lines the right size? Are your pulleys and sheaves the correct sizes? The list goes on and on. Your mooring lines, are they in accordance with 613? Are they terminally spliced correctly? Check them. Read the book, make sure that they are. Your lifelines and stanchions. Once again, we get into the danger aspect of it. We don't know what we don't know. We have a lifeline running through, say it's a GRP lifeline, and we have a J-hook. If the J-hook's not turned forward at a 45, it will not lock the lifeline in. The lifeline can pop out at the top of the J-hook. This is a danger. That's a safety hazard. Read the GSO 612 and it'll tell you that. So make sure that your lifelines are correct. Make sure that they're screwed in correct. Make sure that the Fiji fittings are locked in and they're not going to pull out. The list goes on and on with this stuff. Your tow, your B-towed, inventory kits, your deshackling kits. Your inventory kit is nothing more than your AEL. Is your AEL attached to the toolbox? Is everything in the toolbox that the AEL says should be there? All this equipment has to be laid out such as that for the inspector to go through and go. Okay, continuing on here, some other things we need to talk about. The INSURV website, okay? In the boatswain world, let's take the boat for instance. All we say is we're coxswains, we're bow hooks, we don't worry about anything else. Well, in the INSURV world, we do worry about everything else. We worry about the engine. Is the belts okay? Is the water level okay? Is the lube oil okay in it? The list goes on and on. Are the placards all right? Do we have everything listed that's supposed to be on there? All the equipment. So, who's responsible for that? Well, it all comes down to the deck. Deck is responsible. Yes, engineering puts the oil in, but you're going to take the hit for it if the oil isn't there and the boat doesn't run or there's a problem with it. Just like if your car. You own your car, thus if you didn't put the oil in it or have the mechanic put the oil in it, your car doesn't run, you're out the car. Same thing in deck. If you don't make sure the boat's taken care of by your mechanics, then your boat takes the hit and you're out. So you got to think about that, and that's where teamwork comes in. But this will be a boat inspection just like the biggest boat report you've ever had. So think of it that way. We're going to check your guards, the corrosion on your alternators, corrosion on your starters, bilge, what's in the bilge, does your plugs work? We're going to make you do emergency steering with the boat, zero out your hydraulics. We're going to check all of your lights. We're going to check all of your electronics, all of your gauges. The list goes on. Is your hull, does it have any cracks? Does it have any problems? Your outdrives, any problems there? Is everything set right? Any cracks, any leaks, issues? We're going to make you run it. We're going to check the gauges, all that business. Your batteries, are they tied down right? So as you can see, not to sit here for the next hour and go through everything that's involved with a boat, but every one of your boats are going to get that kind of an inspection for their material condition. So that's what we're looking at. That's why you got to go by the checklist and actually put hands on, because it's not what you expect, it's what you inspect. Think about the rest of the stuff that we're doing. I talked about the fact that we lay stuff out. Here's an example of the life jackets laid out in piles and how it goes. You can see the book, you can see the AELs to say how many you're supposed to have. You can see they're laid in their different piles. Their PMS cards are there, all their stuff in accordance with. You got your helmets, you got your rings. Your rings are actually on station. These are different rings throughout the ship. You got all your stuff laid in an area for your SAR stuff, your gear, your swimmers, the whole works. So it's important. Matter of fact, there's a swimmer right there. Swimmer, come here. Said, just happened to be walking around here. Did you just get done with lunch?
Yes, sir. How are you?
All right, done with lunch. Very important, SAR swimmers, SARgrams. Make sure that you have the latest and greatest SARgram. These guys are like underappreciated, but they're the most important guys on the ship, because I'm telling you, if you go overboard and his gear is not correct by PMS and what have you, and something goes wrong, it's too late, mom's not going to see you again. Okay, and I hate to say it that way, but that's the truth, and that's how important it is. So they take it very serious. You need to make sure you take it serious, because it's, once again, not what you expect, it's what you expect. So make sure that you have the latest and greatest references and up to date. So 2 swimmers, they have to have that to get underway. If you only have 1 swimmer, make sure you have your waiver set up. So swimmers go off the forecastle, or in this case, on an LPD-17 side port, or the ready lifeboat. So it's very important their gear and equipment is ready to rock. Check it, double check it before INSURV comes, because they're going to go into the weeds. Life jackets, come here real quick, please. Okay, we got our life jackets. INSURV is going to go through the life jackets. They're going to inspect these life jackets. First off, making sure that you have your allowance you're supposed to have on board. They're going to count them by your AEL. Then they're going to inspect up to 100 of the Mark 1s, depending on how many you have, or 10% of the Mark 1s that you have. Then we're going to do the abandoned ship life jackets. We're going to do 5% of how many you're supposed to have for those, and then we're going to do 10% of your KPOC, basically. Okay? What we're going to look at in these is to make sure that the PMS is done right, to make sure that you followed the PMS correctly. You didn't skip a step, you didn't assume something, you understood what was going on. We're actually going to blow these up, okay? And I'm going to use one of these examples. INSURV is going to come in, they're going to pull it out, make sure your strings, your lanyards are the correct lengths, they're tied correctly with their bowlines. They're going to actually check your tapes on the back, make sure they fit right. They're going to make sure they light, test them, just like that. They're going to check your batteries. They're actually going to pull them out. They're going to make sure that they aren't expired on their expiration dates on the tops. And they're going to make sure the placed in service date is 1 year. And then they're going to make sure that all the batteries are right. Then they're going to check your whistle and make sure its lanyard's tied right and its proper length. They're going to go down and check your die marker, make sure it's tied right, proper lengths by the PMS card. Then we're going to check, make sure your caps are on. Then we're going to come down here and it says you have to have a 24 gram. We're going to make sure this is a 24 gram. Then we're going to pull this little battery out right here. You see how it unscrews. And we're going to make sure that it's got its proper installation dates on it and it's not expired. This is 2 years. This is 1 by the PMS card. Make sure you read the PMS card on it. Okay? We're going to make sure you got your anti-sabotage compound on. And we're going to make sure that your seizing wire is the correct wire. It's a copper wire, but it looks silver because it's zinc coated in accordance with the SPMIG number and the NSN. So make sure you check it. Last thing we're going to do is we're going to inflate it. If you could please pull it, inflate it. And we're going to make sure it holds air and that it was torqued right here and the seals are right and inch-pounds of torque. And then we're going to make sure you don't have any twists in it at all. So you're good to go. Okay? This one, same thing. Check the seals. Check to make sure. 33 gram. Make sure this says 33 gram. Anti-sabotage. Make sure your seizing wire is correct. Okay? Then we run around. If you can bring your other stuff around. So your little kit here. And we do the same thing. Check the batteries. The whole works. The lanyards. Make sure it's all right. It all fits right. Light them up. Okay? These are important. Right here, they come from the manufacturer with these little holes. Those little holes sometimes are sewn too little, and if it is, the PMS card tells you to tie a loop in it. And that hole is for another toggle to fit through for a buddy line. If this toggle won't fit through this hole my finger's in, then you must tie a loop by the PMS card. So please make sure you do that. The whistles, same thing. Make sure they're tied up right, correctly. And then once again, I talked about the batteries. Of note, I went through this. This is a Firefly 3. A Firefly 3 installed in the jacket must be facing up. See the hole? Like that. And that way it's self-activated by salt water, like you seen me do just a second ago. And last but not least, the Firefly must be on. Firefly 3s must be in the on position. Or if salt water jumped this and it was off, it wouldn't work. So it has to be on. Firefly 2s are not saltwater activated. These don't exist. They are on down when they're installed in the life jacket, switch in the off position. Off position. So please read the PMS. Very specific. Everything I'm saying is great, but it all comes from the PMS. So know your PMS, know how it works. Yep, that's yours. Okay? Last but not least, the KPOC. Pretty simple jacket. Make sure it's stenciled with your ship's name. Make sure you got your Firefly on it. Make sure it's got the right lengths, your whistle, and what have you, and you're good to go. You got your star swimmer and all his gear over here. There's a whole list in their book that discusses all his stuff and what needs to be done. Make sure you go through that book line for line, especially on their harnesses that they wear with their knives and all their lanyards that go with that, and all their lights, which are the blue and what have you, because it's very, very detailed and very important. Okay, I want to talk about a couple things with these. The DMLs, make sure they're in their brackets, 2-inch reflective tape. We're going to flip it, make sure it works right. Okay, if you look right here, it's sealed. What we like to do is we take these apart, okay, and we pull the battery out. It's a 9-volt battery. Your batteries in these should have the screw posts on them, not springs. If you have springs, you're wrong. So check your DMLs and make sure you have the screw posts. Life rings, make sure they're right. All life rings are pretty simple. They're attached with their 4-foot, right? Polypros, except for the quarter deck. Quarter decks are linked to suit. So make sure that you look at your quarter deck life rings and they have enough line linked to suit to the freeboard or the water of the ship from the side. Okay, let's talk about the unreps a little bit. Some of the things we talked about earlier, your lines laid out, make sure they're right. They're laid out to a certain length so we can measure them. Your shackles, all this stuff that we go through with this unrep equipment, very, very important. I hit shackles first. The difference between a grade A and a grade B shackle. A lot of confusion out there. It's strength. It's the strength. If you look at your shackle sizes on our website, you'll see them. It talks about how much you're supposed to hold. If you got 3/4 inch, 5/8, 7/8 shackles. Those shackles are rated. One might only hold so much, the other one holds more. You got to have the ones that hold more. It's just like a nut and a bolt. You got a grade 2 bolt, which is very weak, a grade 8 bolt, which is very strong. A grade A shackle is weak, a grade B is strong. Make sure you got the strong ones for your unrep gear and some of your other gear that you need. Don't use the weak stuff, okay? Attention to detail. All of your pins, are they correct? Because we wouldn't want our poor sailor going to the other ship to have an accident or a problem. So we want to make sure it's right. All of your cotter pins, attention to detail. Are they in? Safety shackles. The actual stations themselves. Please look at the website. We tell you we want to rig refueling stations, a ROB, a probe, the list goes on. We also talk about on your conrep stations. We're going to run this in the normal mode of operation. We're also going to run this manually. So make sure your crews understand how to run it manually. We'll go right by your posted procedures, right by your placards. Do you have all your placards? Your lubrication fittings, all that business, is it all there? That's what we're looking for. Your boats, your davits. I can't explain how important it is that you practice running them in emergency or manual operation. Because if you don't, and you don't know how to do it, that's huge. Because if you lose power to the davit, you must know at a moment's notice how to launch the boat, recover the boat. Oscar, it's too late at that point to learn. So we're going to come, we're going to make you run it to make sure it runs in those operations, whether it's a vest davit on an aircraft carrier, flask call, come up, pumping up hydraulically, you name it. So you may be a hand crank, depending on what you have out there. Make sure you know how to run it and are prepared to run it. Do all your limit switches work? Does your wire, is the wire rope correct? What a lot of folks don't understand with unrep, your wire safety pennants and what have you, if it's swedged, it must be pull tested. Simple rule of thumb. Check it out, 613, 40% of what it's rated at to hold, it has to be pull tested. So check your equipment. If it's not swedged, no problem. But make sure you check your gear, make sure your wire rope logs are up to date, and your weight test logs are up to date. Toolboxes. When we do your unrep toolboxes, we'll want to see all of them laid out side by side with one person on each of them. We're going to go through the inventory list and call out one piece at a time. We call out, for instance, the Allen wrenches. Please don't show us metric Allen wrenches because none of your gear is metric. So get rid of your metrics. It's SAE. Make sure you got the right size stuff and tools in your toolboxes. Very important. You don't want to take a hit like that, not following procedures. But know that we're going to look at everything together, like things are together. Medical aid kits are all together. So we'll look at both those kits together, so on and so forth. SAR swimmers, both of them together. Group stuff like that together as we go through. It helps the inspection go quicker, much faster, much easier for you. Some other things we need to talk about. Documentation. Is everything documented? Is everything weight tested? Do you have the certification for it? Is that wire identified with a serial number attached to it, i.e. a tag of some sort? So in other words, you don't show me a piece of wire and then all of a sudden you show me the paper and the wire has nothing identifying it. That won't go. You got to be able to identify the wire to the paper. So think about that for a minute. As a good ship has all of its certifications, wire ropes, lines, etc., the whole works. This is especially important when we're looking at your side port cranes, we're looking at your regular ship's cranes, anything that's dealing with rigging that we want to talk about, the bridge cranes, some of the LHDs and stuff like that, your stern gates, some of the stuff in your well decks, your davits, all that business. This simple programs, if not kept up, and not up to speed in accordance with their time frames, can take that equipment down. So you have to do your admin and you have to make sure that your stuff is laid out and ready to go. I recommend that you have it on station for when the INSURV inspector comes up there to look at the crane or the tech rep that's coming aboard, they can see it. You got it right there to show it to them and you're not running around going, well, wait a minute, we got that down below, let's go get that. That just holds up things. So be ready, be prepared. Remember, this is your inspection and you want to do well. Be successful. The sailor we talked about. Okay, here we are, upper vehicle. Talking about some other things that maybe you haven't thought about. Your between deck ramps. You want to definitely look at your between deck ramps. You want to make sure they operate correctly, their limit switches operate correct, the winches operate correct, any doggy mechanisms are operating correctly. Don't forget the emergency rigging for them. You have to have your emergency rigging, have them rigged. Now, a lot of the amphibs have stern gates, and their stern gates have emergency rigging. Not going to require you to rig that emergency rigging, but we're going to require you to have it, have the weight test for it, and what have you. We just won't have you run the stern gate. The rest of your stuff, you can pretty much expect to run. Some of the other things we didn't talk about, sewing machines. Do they have the right placards, operating, safety placards? Things like that is what you got to think about. Your punt. Yes, ship's punts have a spec, 583. Make sure that your punts are in accordance with 583. In other words, you didn't go out to Bass Pro and get yourself a styrofoam boat and trying to call that a ship's punt. That won't cut it. It won't be in accordance with the specs. Life rafts, all your certifications, all your hydros, their certifications, all up to date. Are your life rafts correct? Are they PMS correct? Are they tied correct? The list goes on and on. Are they loose in their cradles? We see a lot of that. Make sure that they're not. Make sure the launching instruction for your life rafts are in fact for your hydrostatic releases that you have. Ships over time get new and improved hydrostatic releases, but yet they didn't change the launching placards for them. Make sure you check that. Read through it. Does it make sense? If it does, you're good. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Some of the other things, your ACOM ladders. How many weight tests are there for an ACOM ladder? If you got a J-bar, there's a test for that. If you got outrigger, there's a test for that. There's a test for the ladder itself on the actual steps. There's a weight test for whatever raises and lowers it, whether that's a chain fall, a winch, etc., you name it. Bottom line, make sure that you have all the required weight tests for that ACOM. Make sure that your ACOM is complete. Attention to detail. Do you have your safety step, your roller guards, 3 separate pieces, your H-frames, do they fit snug on the hull, your jack rods and what have you, all the hull fittings, are they correct? Yeah, make sure you check your blueprints and bounce them off of there. That's what tells you what you're supposed to have. The jam nuts on all your turnbuckles, wherever they're at, don't have them loose, whether they're on jack rods, lifelines, wherever that might be, heavy weather lifelines, make sure they're tightened up and they're good to go. Remember, deck department, you own all topside ladders. Make sure you check those ladders. Make sure they're right, they're not corroded, pins missing, loose steps, handrails bent, broken, stuff like that. Make sure you're right. The INSURV inspection, as I said, gets into a lot of things. Corrosion is another thing. Your paint plan, make sure you have one. Go to our website. We have an example. Use the one we got to build one. Your CCIMS codes. Read about it. Understand what that is. Understand what code 4 is versus code 1. Code 1, not bad. Code 4, you got bad issues. INSURV is going to give you a CCIMS score setup. You need to be prepared to understand what that is. All your litters and your safety equipment, your SAR stuff that we talked about, make sure that you go through that and it's laid out in an immediate fashion and you have all the right equipment, your lines, reels, your megaphones, do the batteries work. Don't let little things like that hurt you. I could go on and on forever, but bottom line is that our checklist is there and the reference is there. And I started this whole thing out with the fact it's an open book test. You have to do your homework to do well, and we all want to do well, as I said, starting out. So with that said, I think it's time to get the ship together and figure out what we're going to do. Lastly, go to the website, read it, really read it. Know what to expect from your schedule of events. What's going to happen Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Ask questions of INSURV, often and early. Self-assess, and when you self-assess, be honest. Read your PMS. Not have your people read it, you read it. Read it in detail. Know exactly what it says. Remember boot camp. They taught us one thing, attention to detail for a reason. Organize yourself, organize your team. Divide your team in areas and conquer, one piece at a time. Eat the elephant, one bite at a time. Fix your problems, take care of it. It is not what you expect, rather, but what I've been saying, what you inspect. If you are seeing it for the first time with INSURV, you're going to be surprised. Not a good surprise. Lastly, be very proud of those crossed anchors and the uniform they are on. We have a long and distinguished history of working hard and doing it right. Don't guess, know the answer. This should be a part of everyday operations and not just INSURV preps. Combat operations can come at any time. Is your equipment ready? Don't put yourself, your shipmates, and your ship at risk. So batten down those hatches, hold on to those white hats as we turn into the seas, and may victory at sea to the ones who are best prepared for it. Shipmates, be prepared. Be prepared.